Gentlemen, our purpose today is to request you, our existing shareholders, to give us the means to increase the value of your shareholding by contributing to the growth of your company. We intend to raise up to $45 million, and this will be used over the next 2 years to fund exploration work programs in Kenya and Chad. These exploration work programs are intended to boost shareholder value far in excess of amounts contributed, and to enable shareholders to cash in on that enhanced valuation. We will provide details in a moment regarding our assets and why we are so excited about this opportunity to increase their worth and enhance shareholder value. In the past 3 years, we've gone from having only 3 JDZ blocks under definitive contract to having 3 more blocks under contract in Chad and a further block under contract in Kenya. The size of acreage under ERHC's control has more than tripled in that time. There are still more contracts on the horizon, with negotiations proceeding apace in the Sao Tome and Principe Exclusive Economic Zone, the EEZ, and applications in progress in several African countries. And so we are transiting rapidly from owning only offshore assets operated for us by others to a focus on onshore assets, some of which ERHC expects for the first time to operate in its own right. It is a fundamental shift, but one we expect that if we pursue it diligently, it will better position the company and its shareholders to reap significant and sustainable gains. The ultimate goal, of course, is to see that the benefit accruing to shareholders in terms of realizable value of their investment in ERHC is maximized. I will call on ERHC's exploration manager, Mr. Getian Van Mechelen, to talk about the onshore assets in Kenya and Chad. Our shareholders will realize, of course, that the impending work programs and the advanced pecuniary obligations on these assets are the immediate reason why ERHC needs to raise money and to raise it fairly quickly. Getian?
Good afternoon. Like I said, I'm Gert-Jan van Mechelen. I'm the exploration manager for ERHC, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to go over our exploration program in our 2 onshore blocks in Kenya and Chad. So let's start with our Kenya exploration. First of all, let me say that, and Les already mentioned that, Kenya is currently fully licensed. All licenses have been taken. And when we look at the Kenya exploration, we'll see that the exploration efforts in this country will ramp up significantly. Obviously, the interest in Kenya was first piqued by the discoveries that were made to the south in Uganda, but more recently by the discoveries that have been made by Tullow. So again, this is a very exciting country to be in, and we're very pleased to be part of the exploration efforts that are going on in Kenya. So we go to our block 11A, and as I mentioned, it is partly located in the northwestern corner of the block of Kenya itself, and originally it was a holding by Amoco. In 1985 they gave that up, and in 2007 another company called Chemex, the Central African Mineral Exploration Company, held the block as well, but they released it as well. So recently we are now the holders of that particular block, and I want to just point out that one of the things that is noteworthy for Kenya is that up to about 2010 there were only about 35 wells drilled onshore. So ever since that time there was a little bit of lull in the exploration, but now that has been picking up. I just want to point out one of the other things, that where the exploration effort traditionally had took place was basically over on this side of the basin, in this strip here and over here. This is what is called the tertiary basins, These are now the extension of the basin that we see in Uganda, and that is where the exploration play is now taking place. So again, we're finding Kenya basically on the intersection of two major ridge systems. It is the Cretaceous ridge system, that's sort of northwest-southeast, which is the Central African rift system, and the other system which is called the East African rift system. And Kenya finds itself right smack in the middle of those two intersecting rift systems. And as you can see on this plot, a significant amount of hydrocarbons have been found, particularly in the Cretaceous system in Sudan, but now also, of course, in the tertiary systems in Uganda. And again, like I said, Tullow is one of the main operators now, bringing this play into Kenya itself. So again, we're very excited to be part of that play. One of the things I want to point out is that although I just mentioned earlier that only 35 wells were drilled, we had 3 wells that were drilled in this tertiary play. Actually, I mentioned here the LE Spring well that was drilled in 10B8. The well was drilled in 1992 by Shell. Unfortunately, it was a dry hole, but it did prove the existence of significant reservoir quality sandstones. The next 2 wells are, of course, much more important. The Lopero well was a 92 Shell well as well. That was a well that found the first hydrocarbon in this basin, again in 1992. Significant hiatus until finally, earlier this year, Gambia number 1 well was drilled by Tullow. And Tullow, as you might know, it discovers a column of more than 100 meters of oil, which is significant, and they are very, very pleased with their find. So we hope to see more of that happening. As a matter of fact, Tullow is planning 2 more offset wells in this play. One of the things that is very interesting to know, when you go into the sky and you make maps, what is called the gravity, you can actually see where the rift basins are. And this gives a good picture of where the rift basins are in this part of the world. These rift basins are in the colors that you see in blue and green. So you can see all these rift basins extending in Kenya, from coming on Uganda into Kenya. And when we look to a blow-up of our area, we can see that these rift basins indeed extend into our area. So we're very excited about the fact that we do believe we have this rift basin extending into our area. Now, this particular slide is based on maps that are made by satellite. When we go to the next slide, we'll see that the slide is based again on gravity, but this time the gravity was recorded on the ground. It gives us a better close-up picture. And again, that gravity shows the presence of various basins in the block. We see that in block 11A, in addition to what we saw on the south blocks, rifts coming in. We didn't acquire the gravity there, but in the north, again, we see a deep basin that potentially has 5,000 meters of surface. So again, I want to point out that we're very excited about the fact that we do believe we have these tertiary rift basins in our block. I did mention that in 1985 Emeco had the block, and there was a question raised, did they shoot some seismic? They did, and this is the quality of the seismic. The quality of the seismic is very, very poor. In 1985, we saw significant problems with the fact that we have volcanics both on the surface as well as subsurface that in a sense mask the seismic signal. So we believe though that we do see the presence of a basin, which we believe is that same, that Lubekiti basin that we pointed out in the previous slide. So we do believe the basin is present, and again, what we hope to do in our exploration program is shoot more seismic, and now in 2012 our acquisition method as well as our processing method have seen significant improvement over those 15-some years. So we imagine that we'll be able to, once we shoot our seismic, get a much better subsurface picture of these basins. Again, I mentioned also that we believe we have a significant quality reservoir in our area. This is just a schematic of the Lapur High, and we'll show a little picture of this afterwards. But there's significant, very thick sandstone formations that are outcropping in these mountain peaks, which show significant thickness as well as good porosity. As you know, thickness and porosity are important when it comes to finding hydrocarbons. And this is just a nice overview where we see, so in the mountains we see these outcrop, these thick sandstones. When we again go to the work program, basically our first phase for the work program in Chad consists of year 1 and year 2. And as a sum up of our total work commitment, we see that we will spend about $12 million. And when it comes to the breakdown of that, the most important point I want to point out is the PSC work program. This work program here contains basically work that we intend to do when it comes to what we call a full tensor gravity survey, magnetic survey. So we're flying first a gravity survey over the area again, one more time confirm in greater detail the presence of these basins before we, in a second phase, which we'll show the next slide, go into a seismic program. And that's why you see now that the PSC program is significantly more expensive, because now we're concentrating on a seismic program. So that particular year then brings it to about 15 million. Having said that, we move over to Chad. And again, in Chad, it has a long exploration history. Early exploration in Chad started in the 1970s. And as you know, Chad has always been a very much landlocked situation. And not until about 2003 was it able to really become a producing country with the build of the Chad-Cameroon pipeline going all the way from the fields that were discovered by Esso to the ports in the Cameroon coast. I want to point out here one of the things that is very important about this slide is that it says that basically, although we had some negotiation going on since 2011, June 2011, the critical date here is July 2012. That is really the date when it was officially gazetted. That is the date as of which basically our work program on clock started. So basically, as of July 2012, we are in our first exploration year, rather than June 2010. And here are the three blocks that we're talking about. So we have basically three blocks with significant amount of acres, as mentioned before by Peter. We have a block called Shari West with about 4,500 square kilometers. Block BDS 2008 with about 4,200 square kilometers. And both these blocks are very closely located to what's called the Doba-Doseo Rift Basin, prolific hydrocarbon producing basin. And then lastly, we have a block all the way in the north, which is much more of an exploration wildcat area with 70,000 acres. So this slide, and again, shows where the location of these blocks are. So starting in the north, we have our Manga block, and as we go move to the south, we have our Shire West block and our very large BDS 2008 block. And again, I want to point out that both these blocks, particularly the BDS 2008 block, are very closely located to basically to the fields that were found around Doba, which are the Exxon Kome field complex, where currently about 900 million barrels of oil in reserves reported. One of the things that also first happened after the discovery, after the pipeline was put in place, is that with the pipeline there was also more opportunity to bring maybe potentially some hydrocarbons to the local production, to the local population. So in the early 2011, it was built and finalized in 2012. A refinery was built in Jamina, which will of course help the local population, provide them the local needs. But again, I want to point out that the building of the big Cameroon-Chad pipeline is of course a major asset that unlocked basically the production potential for Chad. And then a quick overview where these blocks are located with respect to one of the more important geological structures in this area. In particular, our Shari West block and the Dobeo block, the BDS block 2008, are located along this zone, which is called the Central Africa Shear Zone. That basically created these rift basins in which we now find these hydrocarbons. What we want to do basically in our first phase, we want to focus on some of these areas. So our initial focus will be on block BDS 2008. And this is for two reasons. We want to basically focus in areas where there's proven oil nearby. Those two areas are areas north of Esso, and we'll get to some maps later. Esso's Tiga and Maku discoveries in the Doseo Basin. And east and on trend with an Opik Benoit discovery